Okay, so I'm going to apologize. This is my 4th time recording. Hopefully this one will save. This is your graphing sine and cosine and tangent functions notes. So sine and cosine are sinusoidal curves. So they kind of go on and on forever. We're going to start these at x equals 0. So when you talk about, we're going to start them at x equals 0. And what you'll see down here, these are what I call my cheats. These are my y values. So for sine, my cheat is 0, max, 0, min, 0. Okay? 0, max, 0, min, 0. Boom, 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 boom. Okay? My cosine cheat, max, 0, min, 0, max. Max, 0, min, 0, max. And I'll show you how to find these maximum and minimums. They're based off your amplitude on your equation. Tangent has to be a little bit trickier. If I started at 0, you wouldn't see a complete, nice, pretty tangent graph. So we're going to start at negative pi over 2. I'm going to start at negative pi over 2. And it's going to be undefined, which is my asymptote. Okay, undefined is the asymptote. Negative a, that's my amplitude. 0, a, and another undefined, which is my other asymptote of the other end. Remember, these are my y values I'm going to use to graph. Start at x equals 0 for sine and cosine, and start at negative pi over 2 for tangent. Tangent function is undefined for certain values of x. Therefore, the tangent function has vertical asymptotes. Okay, we talked about them right here. We're going to graph them nice and easily. Tangent function doesn't necessarily have an amplitude because it doesn't stop. It goes on forever, but we will use that a value to help us graph a little bit. The length of a cycle is called a period. It's how long it takes it to go one complete round. Can start at any point on the graph, like we talked about. Sine and cosine, we're going to start at 0. Tangent, we're going to start at negative pi over 2. I'm going to start that at negative pi over 2. Half the distance between the minimum and maximum values is called your amplitude. And you can find your amplitude off of your equations that are given to you when we start to graph them. So f of x, remember that's a fancy y equals a times the sine of b of x, or f of x equals a times the cosine of b of x. A is going to be your coefficient in front of your trig function. B is going to be your coefficient of x. To find your amplitude for sine and cosine and tangent, it's the absolute value of a. We'll deal with if it's a negative a little bit later. The period of its sine or cosine is 2 pi divided by b. B is your coefficient of x. Tangent's a tad bit different when we talk about period. Your period for a tangent function is now pi, not 2 pi. Pi over the absolute value of b. And we have asymptotes that are odd multiples of pi over 2b. Okay? These next ones, we're going to find the amplitude and the period of each of these functions. So for the first one, f of x equals sine of 4x. My amplitude is 1. There's no number, so assume it's a 1. Period is 2 pi divided by b. B in this case is 4. 2 pi over 4 is the same as pi over 2. Simplifying fractions is a must. 2, my amplitude is 7/2. My b value is 1, so 2 pi over 1 is just 2 pi. For 3, f of x equals negative 5 cosine of x divided by 3. Amplitude, absolute value of that negative 5, so it's positive 5. Period is 2 pi divided by 1/3. Remember, when you divide by a fraction, you multiply by the reciprocal, so my period is 6 pi. Last 3, f of x equals 2 times the tangent of 3x. Amplitude is 2. Period this time is pi divided by b. b is 3. Period is pi over 3. F of x equals negative 2 sine of 4/3 x. Amplitude is 2. Absolute value. Period is 2 pi divided by 4/3, which is the same as 6 pi over 4, simplifies to 3 pi over 2. 6. Negative 1/2 tangent of 2/5 x. Amplitude, remember, absolute value. Amplitude is 1/2. Period is pi, it's tangent, pi divided by 2/5, which is 5 pi over 2. Now we're going to graph some of these, and I apologize that they're already graphed, like I said earlier. All right, we want to find the amplitude, the period, and what I'm going to call the Q. I will label it Q or quad. Amplitude is 2. Period is 2 pi over b. B is 1, so this is 2 pi. To find your quad, it's your period divided by 4 every single time. So in this case, 2 pi divided by 4, which is pi over 2. I will immediately go and put my cheat for my y values down for sine. 0, max, 0, min, 0. Remember, sine, they start at 0, so I'm going to start at 0. To find my next point, to find my next value, you're going to add your quad. So 0 plus pi over 2 is pi over 2. To keep finding these points, you add your quad. Pi over 2 plus pi over 2 is 2 pi over 2, which is pi. Pi plus pi over 2 is 3 pi over 2. 3 pi over 2 plus pi over 2 is 4 pi over 2, which is 2 pi. Now you have an x and a y value, and we just graph them. 0, 0, boom. Pi over 2. Now look here. I have labeled my graph, so every 4 is pi. So that means pi over 2 is halfway in between. Pi over 2, and it says max. Max means you're going to go up your amplitude. So I'm going to go up 2. At pi, I come back down to 0. At 3 pi over 2, I go to my minimum. Maximum was up my amplitude. That means minimum's down my amplitude. And at 2 pi, I'm back at 0. The next one, f of x equals 5 times the cosine of 1/2 x. Amplitude is 5. Period is 2 pi divided by 1/2. So the period is 4 pi. Quad, period divided by 4. So my quad is pi. I moved my x-axis down a little bit so you could see how this stretches. Okay, my cheat for my cosine, max 0, min 0, max. Cosine starts at 0. And just like with sine, we're going to add pi. 0 plus pi is pi. Pi plus pi is 2 pi. 2 pi plus pi is 3 pi. And 3 pi plus pi is 4 pi. Now we're just graphing our points. 0 max, so 0 up 5. Pi comes down to 0. Go 4 more. 2 pi goes down to my minimum. Go 4 more, 3 pi is back at 0, and go 4 more boxes, 4 pi is up at my maximum. Now this next one, this third one's a little bit trickier because you have this negative sign. We'll deal with that in a second. Amplitude is 5/2, remember absolute value. Period is 2 pi divided by 2/3, which is the same as 6 pi over 2, which is 3 pi. Your quad is 3 pi over 4, period divided by 4 every single time. Every single time. Now, I'm going to write my cheat down, but you'll notice that's not usually my cheat for cosine. Remember, this negative sign means it reflects over your x-axis. So whatever was positive on my y now becomes negative. So you're going to kind of reverse it. If it was a max, it's now become a min. So my cheat is min, 0 max, 0 min. Cosine starts at 0. Add my quad. So 0 plus 3 pi over 4 is 3 pi over 4. 3 pi over 4 plus 3 pi over 4 is 6 pi over 4, which simplifies to 3 pi over 2. Add 3 pi over 4 again, you're at 9 pi over 4. Add 3 pi over 4 again, I'm at 12 pi over 4, which is the same as 3 pi. Now you just go graph. Remember, minimum means I go down my amplitude. 0 is at my 0. Maximum means I go up my amplitude. I'm back at 0 and down at my minimum. Now, to get these pi over 4s, I made pi every 2 boxes, so that means pi over 2 is that first box, so I have to make 4s by splitting those boxes in half. The last two are tangent graphs, but again, we have that negative, so we'll talk about that in a second. It's -1, so my amplitude is 1. Remember, tangent's different. Period is pi divided by b, so pi divided by 1/2 is 2 pi. Quad is 2 pi, or period, divided by 4, so pi over 2. But remember, tangent, you start at negative pi over 2 and add your quad. You'll notice here my cheat is not what I had on the front side. On the front, I had undefined negative a, 0, a, and undefined. But just like I talked about with this cosine, it flipped. With tangent, it flips as well. Any negative a's become positive a's, and any positive a's become negative a's. And now you just graph your point, a being your amplitude. Positive a means you're going up. Negative a means you're going down.